I'm here at ARCIFORM. Let's go inside and see what ARCIFORM is all about. Hello, Anna. It's so good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Start with, why don't you show us around your office a little bit?
This is our office. We have moved around from our basement and bedroom office into our building on Interstate and finally down to this space. So we have a 30,000 square foot shop that enables us to build windows, doors, and cabinetry. We are the owners of Versatile Wood Products as well as ARCIFORM, so it's a nice symbiotic relationship to have both companies. One is product based and the other one is service based, hold each other's hands to complete these preservation projects and remodels.
I am lucky enough that I get to come in here quite often and have a few questions about some of the things that I look at constantly in your office, like your drafting table. It's gorgeous.
Go get a pen and pencil out and start doing some drawing. And so that is kind of a leftover drafting table. I don't need that big drafting table to do that, but I had it from when I started and I did a lot of hand drawing. And now I just have it here to do like some brainstorming and sketching.
So do you want to tell us about the rendering here and kind of some of the tools that you use as part of your process?
So the lovely thing is, like we talked about with the drafting table, there's these drawing programs now called like CAD, what's called computer-aided drafting. There's AutoCAD, and what we use is Chief Architect, which is a drafting program that generates not only 2D but 3-dimensional renderings as well.
Oh, cool.
So instead of drawing, you really program. So when I draw in a window, I don't actually draw this window. I program into the computer. It's a double hung window. It's this big. It has the sash size, which is all the little details and elements. You program that in, and then it pops it into the wall. Where before that, I drew in the wall by programming, and it's a sheetrock wall with 2x4 stud framing and sheathing and framing. So you program that all in, and then you draw the wall, and the program will then generate out of that information, and programming will generate the 3-dimensional view for you. So it can create sections for me to send to the engineer. It can create sections for me so I can study my relationships are right. It's an awesome program. It's like playing a computer game all day long. It looks a little cartoonish. That's the other thing I keep telling my clients. Ultimately, while these renderings are pretty good, they're also very cartoonish. And the nice thing is people love these renderings, and then in reality, it's 10 times better because you have textures, you have lighting elements, you have personality of just texture especially. But it does help inform the client, it helps inform the people building things, it helps inform the designer to be sure proportions are right. So it's just really, really fun and easy to manipulate. Like once I have the elements programmed, I can easily say, I want this window to be a little bigger, and just make it bigger. Or I want this to have a different counter surface, and I can click a different color and just change the counter. So while it takes a little bit of an initial investment in time, once you have passed that initial hurdle, drawing and communicating.
Is that initial investment in time, are you actually having to do like coding kind of work?
Yes, so it's not coding, I would say it's programming. Coding is what the people do, creating the program, and I'm not the computer tech person, but I would call it programming. I program in the information that's specific to the project. So I don't go back and then code it. No, it's not coding.
Okay.
It's programming. It's just really, they have a nice little table and they ask you questions and then you just fill in the right answer.
Oh, cool.
And you learn that. The tutorials are great. It's a wonderful program to use, I believe, for the scale of projects we do. It can get, even this house is huge. It's like 8,000 to 10,000 square feet. And so that sometimes with all that information held into the drawing program, it makes things go really slow. So you need a really powerful computer with a good video card that can support that kind of program. But once you have that, it's really, really great.
And then do you start with the architectural drawings, the drafting drawings, and then get to this?
Ultimately, we go out and measure. We measure the house with tape measure and sketches and document everything. Then we take that information and generate 2-dimensional floor plans like you see. And in those floor plans, we program in what I told you about, the ceiling heights, framing members, textures on walls and floors, and lighting fixtures. Everything gets kind of programmed and put into those floor plans based on the information we gathered during the site visit. So, and then once that's done, then I can pull out a camera in the drawing program and I'll show a 3-dimensional view of that room. So it's great too to double check yourself, have I done this right? It helps line things up properly. It just makes sure if chief architect doesn't like it, generally we did something wrong, because they have programmed in this tool to be architectural. And they will give you red lights to say, this really can't be happening. So sometimes we argue with it because we build old houses and they're built different than new houses. So we have to override what the program might want us to do. But it's also good because makes you double check yourself, did I really do this correct?
Right.
So when you want to learn this program, you really need to do your architectural vocabulary. Because if you don't know what things mean, you can't program the information, and because you don't know what they're asking of you.
Yeah.
So I've been doing this for 20 years now. It gets easier and easier and easier. So it's just a wonderful tool.
Yeah.
All in all, it's great. Great communication, great documentation, and really fun to use.
How do you keep everything organized and manage as a designer and a creative person?
I am very fond of systems, and to me, delegating and communicating is very much a creative process, because you got to figure out whom you're talking to and how you're talking to that person, and what are you trying to convey. There's different ways to doing that. With Chief Architect, I have a visual tool, and then we have to also back it up in writing so that in case there's confusion, we have a trail to follow that back up. And also, we all want to document our mistakes so we don't make them again, and we document our successes so we can build on those. In that, over the last 20 years, I've had a lot of successes and a lot of failures. And so what I did, I decided to have big categories like drawing and as-built. What is important to keep in mind? What don't you want to do? What does chief do wrong or not quite good for us? What does it do really well? So I have almost like instruction manuals on all the different parts that we do as designers every day in this department. So for my design staff, I've created a binder that shows them how does Anna want the drawings detailed? How does Anna want copies made of different sets? We do budget checks, i.e. we want to check how the design is influencing the budget for the client, and the PM, that is, or the project manager is going to do that, needs particular information. So it's an how-to information that the designer can put together for the project manager, so that the project manager always knows where everything is too. So if it's always organized the same way, they don't have to dig through stacks of paper and trying to find something. They know this is how Anna does it, so I know where to find this information. So again, it's like over 20 years. It took time, but it's our go-to binder when I have a new staff member. Then they know where to find information. I know I don't have to repeat myself over and over again, which is one of my biggest frustrations. And so I highly recommend writing down your successes and put it in a format that can be easily updated in case you learn something new, something changes, and then it creates a nice standard for the company as well.
Can you go through kind of some of your tabs and different categories that you have in your binder?
So, and even I use it. It's our employee handbook, which is everyone gets this, and that's a legal form. And I have this because I'm the owner. I give a lot of reviews, so I have to a lot of referencing back on performances and what not to do and what is fine and not fine to do. So that's a big one. Lots of legalities. That is where I have to be involved in a lot. How to organize our information on the server. I don't want everyone to do a different methodology of creating binders. So I have that outlined. TeamLogic is our support for computer issues. And then like how I want my folders to be organized. I'm very, very
I
mindful of that.
understand why
Yes.
now running my own business. And
Time tracking, how to track time, which again is very important as a designer. You want to be able to bill for your time.
Mhm.
You also want to be able to justify to your boss, to me, how you spend your time, as well as me being able to justify that to the client.
Right.
And then it is also associated with taxes and payroll and insurance, so that all kind of overlaps. But here it's very detailed because there's a lot of pitfalls there for employees to fall into.
Mhm.
Communication. So we have key communication rules in ARCIFORM. Be polite, be kind, don't do sexual harassment type.
Mhm.
How to be sure that proactive communication. So there's all kinds of a little reminder on how to talk to each other.
Yeah.
That's a big one. Construction documentation, that's a big one. This is for me, is here your site measure, and then how to put together an as-built, how to put together a design set, how to put together, the big one is a tool that we use is check each other's work. I'm a huge fan as a manager, trust but verify. I think anyone does their best, but everyone makes mistakes.
Mhm.
I make mistakes. So if I get to a 60% completion of my drawings, I will hand it off to somebody, either the other designer or a project manager or a junior designer, and they will read through everything and make sure I make sense. And there's not a bunch of spelling mistakes. So we do a lot of reviewing of each other's work.
Mhm.
And so there's more guidelines to that on how to do that. But yeah, if you manage trust but verify, and don't make it an insulting thing, let everyone understand that that's just good practice.
Yeah.
And site measures, so if you do a site plan of not just the house but the whole site, this is what the city of Portland has put together, so I don't need to really make each form myself. Some of it has been put together. This is details on how to document existing situations.
Oh.
Code verifications on things we deal with all the time. So that was one set of construction documents. This is another set of construction documents where it goes into a little bit more detail on, again, how we tag things.
Mhm.
This is just very much ARCIFORM specific.
Mhm.
This is my set, my default set. I created a very thorough template for my chief architect drawings because to me it's easier to delete than to add information.
Mhm.
So I write it all down for people in the different circumstances and they can just go through it. It's a good check sheet on how to do things, and then they just delete out what they don't need.
Mhm.
Again, I've had a lot of 20 years of this.
Yeah.
That's a lot of it. Cabinetry, how to do cabinetry, specs, and ultimately how to do ADUs and Airbnbs. So
Cool. Wow. And that's your main binder that you use.
that is my binder
Mhm.
for the designer. That's it.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it works great. And then we have this whole thing digitally as well now for people working remotely. And then if anybody uses this and says I have room for improvement, I'm like, write me a draft on what you want to improve. I approve it, and then we update it.
Oh, that's great. So you
So-
open it up
Oh, of
to
course.
your staff to be a
Always.
collaborative part of
Yeah,
how
always.
you run your system.
Most of these have been written by staff too, because I don't do a lot of this stuff. I always delegate it, and I say, please write this for me.
Mhm.
And then while you're doing it, and then I just proofread it, and we put it in here.
Yeah. Okay, so here we are in the more of the main space of ARCIFORM, and we can take off our masks now because we are distant. So, Anna, you have told us a lot about kind of the logistical and the business side of being a design manager. Tell me more about your creative side and what we're looking at here. And
Well, for remodeling and designing for remodel projects, the creative part is really puzzling and space planning and working around existing conditions while adding maybe a little flair and personality from the client. But I always say there's many people at the desk. There's the designer, whom should be kind of more of a facilitator and maybe a translator of ideas. And then there's the house that brings in its style and opinions, if you will. And then there's of course the client. Then we also have the carpenters and PMs, and everyone has an opinion. So as a designer, it's filtering all that information and making sure it's the best final outcome, considering the different goals and different angles. And then, of course, materials and fixtures and finishes and lighting and just spaces, volumes, and that is what ultimately is so rewarding. You go through all these challenging parts, where does the heating and cooling come from? Where is electricity running? How's the plumbing being facilitated? And the practical aspects of, for example, remodeling a kitchen, you need to make it functioning. It can't just be pretty. It needs to be, it's the most well-used room in a house with the most, diverse set of what do we call it, tasks that need to be performed, as well as comfort, and beauty, and just so many things. And so the finishes and the final touches are actually something that goes relatively quickly in the design process. What makes me excited about being a designer is the problem-solving part. I let my clients kind of go through the finishing portion of it. I will help them figure out where it ultimately goes, but everyone is different. Some people like a lot of texture, that makes them happy. Others, textures makes them really anxious. So you have the different personalities there too to help and please. So you kind of educate your client. You have to keep educating yourself to make sure that you are, giving the client the best options. Working around budgets. It's the other team member at the table is making sure the money is spent in the best possible way for the client to be as happy as they can be within their investment goals. So there's so many ways to be creative in the design process, and it's not what one maybe think. It's not just like putting colors together or putting finishes together or finding the right light fixture. It's just so many other things, and that's what gets me excited.
So more the collaborative part of it, and problem solving, like you said, and working through and figuring out kind of what people's different personalities are, and you as the expert kind of know what that means, what that translates to. Are there certain projects that you're most proud of or that were the most fun for you that you could talk a little bit about? And
so I have a project where a client bought a little bungalow in Lake Oswego, and we added on a garage, and we added on a kitchen addition and a breezeway, and in that process we found a lot of vintage and salvaged building material that we were integrating, and that client was constantly on eBay and at Aurora Mills or the Rebuilding Center and just collected stuff, and then they asked me to integrate it, and I had to make those materials meet code. They had to be, I was able to trust our craft people to be able to restore them, to make them functioning again. And then everything had a story. So when we were done with the project, you looked at every part of the house and everything had a story to tell. So you could spend hours and days just talking about all the different cool finds and problems we solved with the finds, or a problem that had to be solved because of a found thing that we had to then go down that route. So it's just and then the client was very willing to participate in that, and the participation of the clients, I believe, makes the process more effective and efficient too, because they understand where you're going and they make their yes or no decisions, and they'll lead you the right way, and I help them lead. We lead each other the way, but there's no real holdups or miscommunication. So those are wonderful.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? So your process with the clients and how you started off, and how you get them to kind of open up and get excited about it.
Yes. I think now that we have 22 years under our belt, people know enough about us so they get excited just having us come over. But even 10, 15 years ago, I had to convince them that, it's really fun to be working with us. So at that point, it's really, you just got to be really honest and straightforward with the client from the very beginning. Because if you're asking them to do that for you, to be able to help them, they got to expect that from you as well. So transparency and having them feel like you're not being a salesperson holding back truth that might not be pleasant, being upfront, giving them all the information that you can share with them right away. Don't sugarcoat things. You know, that's how I've always approached my initial meeting with them. And if they like that, they'll go and hire me. If they like to have a little bit more sugarcoating and maybe a little bit more very like keep the dream alive, as you know we call it, and maybe not quite so heavy on the beginning, then I might not quite be the right designer, because I am not very good at keeping things inside.
Yeah.
So so I think that initial conversation is very key on how you communicate, your personality, how that comes through. Aesthetics, again, is like I'm telling them I'm not really going to dictate my aesthetic to you. I'm going to try to find what your aesthetic is, and then we'll go from there. And so I will, of course, always brainstorm with them, and I will read their faces. And when I see something like, oh, that didn't go over so well, I will tell them, I can see that this idea wasn't so great for you. Let me change that, because there's always options, you know.
Right.
And I don't want them to ever feel cornered into being pushed into a direction that they might not feel comfortable with.
So how does the process go with the creative process go with the client? Like, what do you start with once you've secured the contract that you're going to do the remodel? Then what?
ARCIFORM is very focused on documenting the existing very thoroughly, because what we have found in the past that we have gotten drawings from other firms that will have totally unrealistic drawings because they didn't document the existing properly. So then there's time and money spent designing around something that is actually not there. So our first big investment with ARCIFORM is documenting existing very detailed and programming that into a chief architect.
Okay.
And then we double check. Running list on the side that if you forgot to collect information, we always have that so that there's nothing forgotten. That we're not designing a bathroom where there's a big duct and toilet stack in the way, or that a window is where it's supposed to be so we can fit things, because often it's very tight. We don't have much room. So very thorough documentation of existing. And then I ask the client, do you want me to design it as I would if it were my house? Or do you want to sit with me while I design things and go through some ideas and we do it together? And because they can watch me do chief architect. And then I do a Pinterest board based on kind of what our initial meeting was about and what I feel like they might like. And I'll send that to them so they can give me feedback on that. I try to get as much input from them initially so I don't go down some direction they don't like. So but generally I spend, pending the scope of the project, if it's a whole house remodel, I'll generally spend like a day designing just to get my bearings and get some ideas on paper. And then we will do a presentation with a client. And that's generally the biggest aha moment for the client. They can see what the house can do. They can see what my drafting program can do in helping them understand options. They get really excited. We have finishes pulled for them. We have a big Pinterest board with kind of specs already, like this plumbing fixture may have been selected already because it fits good. So it was just some ideas and project, you know, just some brainstorming ideas for us all to go through. And then they either like it or they want to do another meeting because it's just too much to wrap their mind around.
Right.
They may not like it, and then we will go and say, what don't you like about it? And that's also very important to know. What does the client not like? You know, so then we will tweak and adjust. And then we would take what our initial design is and our initial finishes and fixture selection and give that to our project manager for project budget development, where we sit down and just do either collect some preliminary numbers that we can pull from other projects, or we will meet some subs at the site and get some initial feedback from them, pending how complex the project is.
Okay.
And then we populate our estimating spreadsheet with some preliminary numbers just to see how this design concept meets up with budgets. And so we either have to adjust the design, or we have to adjust the budget, or everything is great.
Wow.
And then based on that, if everything is great, we then move forward and detail develop. Everything gets documented. Which plumbing fixture goes where, which outlet goes where, which down to which knob goes on the cabinet where. I mean, from engineering, historic review processes, everything. But we'll go into that after that, because we don't want to go there if the budget and the design don't
Yeah.
don't meet.
Right.
And then we hand it off to construction. here, we are done. No,
Wow.
we are not done, but yes, we still participate
Yeah.
even after. But yes, that's then getting handed off. And then the PM takes over and does the managing.
So the next question I have is something I want to ask just because I know it's something that comes up for me, and I think for a lot of designers it's a great thing to get perspective on, especially from a successful designer. So tell me, do you deal with self-doubt, overwhelm, anxiety, and if so, how do you process and work with those feelings?
So it's being overwhelmed, self-doubt, and anxiety. I know they're all related with each other, but for me, there's some that I can handle on my own and some I can't. Like self-doubt is I have high performance anxiety. Not so much that I doubt myself with regards to my creativity. It's more that I can't have somebody be disappointed in me. And that I guess is a relative thing. But for me, for the longest time, really, since I was a teenager, I dealt with anxiety. I don't want to disappoint somebody. And it got so bad that in my 40s I lost sleep to a point where I was feeling like I was being a hazard while driving. I couldn't eat properly, and I tried everything, exercising and meditation, mindfulness, counseling, and nothing helped. So I'm now on an anti-anxiety medicine, and I love it. I call it my best little friend every morning, and it really does help keep me clear-headed enough that I can actually enjoy myself. But before I was always this fog. And so I don't know how much of that then had to do with just a chemical imbalance or actual self-doubt. The feelings are very similar. That anxiety, that adrenaline rush. So when I start out as a designer, the self-doubt is kind of interesting. I have a husband that doesn't doubt a thing. So you have this husband him and I are working together and have run this company together. He just feels if other people can do it, I can do it too. And he's tireless and has limited energy. So next to him, when I get tired at the end of the day and I have to go to bed and it's not been done yet, I get anxious. And he just keeps working on it until it's done. And he says to himself, I've gotten the best done I could today. Now I get to rest so I can do some more tomorrow. So he just tackles it one day at a time, but I then lie awake at night and still worry about all the what if. And he's like, you can't solve anything anyway. And everybody knows you have to sleep, so stop bothering, worrying. It's not a life or death situation. So what I've learned from that is, for one, really you can't, you've done your best. The other thing is set realistic timelines for yourself. Self-doubt, that's kind of mood related. Sometimes I feel like I'm the best designer ever, and the next time like I can't feel like I do anything right. So it is kind of a little bit depending on the day, and not every project is going to be tailored to you. You feel it is, but it doesn't. You can't be everything to everyone. So sometimes you may be more successful than others, and that's also part of the game. And you can't be too hard on yourself with that. So that's my opinion on that. But it took a long time to get there. Yeah. And having good staff members helping you, keep your head above the water, and a good team that is a positive enforcement, that also always helps. That's what I love about America. People are very complimentary here. They're not so complimentary in Germany. I can say that. So it's a very nice trait of the Americans in general. Yeah. It's good for the ego.
So I would love to check out your Pinterest boards.
Okay.
I think that's one of the funnest parts about your creative process. So can we go?
All right. So we have to mask back up.
So now we're back in the office and mask back on. We get to see some of Anna's Pinterest boards. Anna, will you walk us through your Pinterest board and what your process is and how you do that with your clients?
So what I do is, when I get a client that signs on with me, I have a meeting with them that our initial interview, and then I go back, they sign on with me. I go back to the office, I set up the site measure, introduce the team to the project, and then I also start a Pinterest board and kind of start collecting ideas that I can find that remind me of the conversation I had with them. I create subcategories like guest room, laundry, balustrade, basement in general, lighting, lounge area, bar, office, and kitchen, of all the different areas they want me to help them design. So, and then I start populating that board based on ideas that I think they might like. So the husband, for example, had mentioned he likes Irish pubs. She is Swedish, so I think it's going to be his office. So I wanted to give him a little bit an opportunity to live his Irish pub dream, where then the rest of the spaces could be more Scandinavian and simple. And then I invite the client to the board, so then the client can add pictures as well. So we start collaborating on brainstorming for ideas for the different areas. So that would be, for example, the library. Then we're doing a basement lounge area that I had populated, and the client added another picture. So we are pretty much similar in our aesthetic of what I thought they might want. And then you can like it. You know, you can do a little heart. Yes, I like what you did, and then she likes what I did. You know, so that's how you kind of just start out to get a little bit of the feeling and flair. Exactly. So, and then I program Chief Architect with that aesthetic, because again, once I program a cabinet, I program that all, then it generates 3D views of it, and I only have to do that once. But if I don't know the aesthetic, then I program something that may not be what they want. So go ahead. Lighting fixtures that she added that she likes, that helps me figure out ideas.
Do you kind of use this throughout your whole process?
Yes. Initially it's general spaces, and then once we get further in, I might even do like specific, there's no bathroom in this one, but I will be putting in the particular plumbing fixtures that I'm selecting, and give her opportunities, or him, depending on who's going to look at it, opportunity to say, oh, I really don't like that. So it goes through the entire process. In the end, we want to look at some wallpaper. So we'll just populate this, and maybe we add another board, say wallpaper board, and just everyone just adds some ideas about wallpaper, and then we can all just say, I like it, I don't like it, let's get some samples of this. So yeah, this is just the very beginning. And then I can show you a project that has been completed, let's say. So here we have, you know, we're going down in the living room furniture, closet lighting. Here we're actually looking at particular lighting fixtures, right? And tube steel, we're building closet systems out of tube steel. And where initially we might have just had a regular closet, you know, so that's kind of general to specific.
If I was your client, I would get so excited about this part of it and get really involved.
Most of them are, it's a generational thing too. So I have clients that are like a little older and they have a bit of a hard time with Pinterest, but the younger generation, or not even that young, but like my age or even a little older, there's like a generation gap. I have a couple of clients that are like 80, 70, and they have a hard time with this. They rather meet in person and talk about it. But they're getting there. I show them and they're like, oh, and then we work on it some more. But in general, yeah, the majority of client gets excited and gets involved. I have rarely a client that says, you just take it over, you know, and just do it, because I just think it's no fun anyway. And then I think it's also a lot of money for them to spend in my time speculating.
Yeah.
This way I don't have to speculate all that much. And so, yeah, and everybody can kind of be really proud of themselves because they all took part of it and they all helped and found cool ideas, and it's just a collaborative effort this way. It's really fun.
Yeah. Thank you, Anna, so much for sharing with us your process and all of the fun ways that you stay inspired. You are a continuous inspiration to me. I'm so glad that I get to work with you on a regular basis.
Well, thank you, Snow, for giving me this opportunity and having this interview. It was very fun, and it's always fun to work with you and Snowbee Design and your wonderful team of very creative and energetic people that you work with. It's just a pleasure, and I wish you and your design series best of luck, and hopefully it'll inspire some young designers.
Thank you all for tuning into the Designer Spotlight series. I'm looking forward to the next one.